Hey brother, it is currently the 23rd of September, the year of our Lord 2016. Today is Artsy Fartsy Friday, where we let loose a creative one and focus on the aesthetics of the game. So, a few weeks back, I mentioned that I was going to be looking at doing some low polygon triangle-y art, and I found a tutorial by a gentleman named Artsy, and a link in the thingamay below. And I started working on some of the art for the game. So I set up my own little pipeline. I don't know how real artists work, but this is how I do it. First, I started with sketching. I'm not very good freehand with a computer. I don't have a tablet or anything else, so I came up with this on your father's graph paper. And so what I've got are several rows of goods that you'll be able to sell across the top, and then 6 merchants that you'll be able to sell to, and then more loot at the bottom. So overall, I've drawn about 30 different little pictures, and what I did is I scanned them in, cut them up, and I'm going to trace over them using the Aaron's tutorial. So without further ado, I'm going to give you a demo of kind of my little process here. So I'm going to open up Inkscape, and I'm going to go and import a PNG image, and these are just the raw scans, so you can see the graph paper there. And for this demo, I'm going to take good number 6. I don't have a name for it, but I think it's going to be something like a cubic yak or something fun. So I'm going to import it. I don't care a whole lot about the quality because this is just what I'm tracing over more than anything else. And then I'm going to zoom in, so we get a nice, good picture here of the yak, maybe out just a little bit. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to create little circles. I'm going to make them red so they're easy to see. And these are going to be my little vertices that I create. So I'm going to draw them fairly small because that gives me precision. I'm going to adjust this one. I'm going to copy it. And then I'm just going to start pasting it all over the place. And what I've found is that it's really important to get like the corners of what you want and places where you want lines to intersect. And it's also important to make sure that you don't go completely bananas, because the more of these you create, the more triangles you're going to get, which means the more triangles you're going to have to fill, which can make the video significantly longer. In fact, in the post-editing, I may just speed this up to 10 times. You'll get to hear my chipmunk voice, but you won't have to watch this in such excruciating detail. So I'm going to keep going and place these dots, and you'll notice that we're slowly outlining the important shapes here. The cubic yak is an animal that's going to be found on the player's homeworld. It's going to be one of the starting goods that they've got available to trade. And because of its cubic nature, this is going to be kind of interesting because we're making everything out of triangles. So this is going to be a good exercise in learning how to do squares with triangles and making it all work. So I'm going to add a few more of these dots. I think I've got everything covered. If you want to add more detail and more texture, you can just throw in some random dots. I might do that for the eyes of the cow or the yak. Same thing, I'm sure. And this just adds a little bit more detail, as you'll soon see. Now that I've got all my dots laid out, I'm going to go and I'm going to select all my dots. If I remember this step, I don't want to select the image in the back, I just want to select my dots. And then I'm going to go up to extensions, I'm going to go to generate from path, Voronoi diagram. You can tell me how to pronounce that, but it's Voronoi or something like that. And I'm going to use something that's really complicated called a Delaunay triangulation, which basically says take all these points and draw triangles. I guess if you come up with a fancy algorithm, you get to name it after yourself. So go mathematicians, we love you. Just to make sure this is working the way I want, I'm going to click Live Preview here, and bam, you can see this at work. It's created these triangles, and I may need to clean up a few of these, but this looks pretty good. So I'm going to go and hit Apply and Close, and then I'm going to go and make a few adjustments here. First, I'm going to take this wireframe out of the way for a moment. I'm going to select all my dots and I'm going to delete them. Don't need them no more. They're just there to create this framework. I'm going to move this back. I'm going to align it more or less. You know, it really doesn't need to be precise because, again, the background's just there for reference. And then now I'm going to take this framework and I'm going to go and ungroup it to get the individual polygons. Now here's where it gets interesting. I get to shade these suckers. So I'm going to select the color picker tool, and actually I'm going to select nothing so you don't see all those boxes. Pick the color picker tool and then we hit Tab, and that selects the next shape. So I've selected the background, but I don't want that. Oh, there's a triangle. So I imagine that these yaks look, I almost want to make them green, you know, but that would kind of be a little creeper-esque. So I'm going to make them brown, because that's what yaks are. They're brown. So thankfully, Inkscape provides a ton of color palettes to choose from. So I'm going to survey my options here, and I'm going to pick one that's brown. Now, this is actually part of the horn, and I probably want the horn to be distinct from the body. Contrast is good. And so I'm going to make it gray. I can always change this later, but so for now I'm going to start with gray. One important thing, and this is kind of an artsy thing, I'm hoping that my cam turned back. Yes, it didn't. There we go, my smiling face. So when you're dealing with light, you want, or picture rather, you want to deal with your light. You want to pick a direction that the light's coming from. For me, it's coming from it's coming from one corner down, because I'm imaginative that way, and I'm not being super precise here for a bunch of reasons. But if I go back and once again, let's make sure the software switched. It did. Awesome. So my light is coming down from this direction. So I'm going to make this side of the horn a little bit darker. And then we hit Tab to go to the next triangle. And unfortunately, there doesn't seem to be much of a rhyme or reason as to which triangles, get which shade. But, we'll deal with that. I'm going to skip over some of these triangles. Oh dear, that triangle. You see, there should be a line here, and there's not. That's a bummer, because that's going to make the yak look a little bit odd. I'm going to keep going with this just for the sake of our little demo here, but it's probably something we'll have to fix. So another thing that seems to be a good general rule of thumb is that since we're dealing with triangles, and triangles have three sides, you always want to have three colors, so that way you don't ever have the same color adjacent to itself, which of course makes your triangle no longer a triangle, but some weird sort of converse polygon. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep going. I'm going to make sure I've got at least 3 shades to work with, and that's a bummer. I'm going to have to fix that. And this may be where I speed the camera up. and we'll see. If you hear chipmunk noises about now, that means I did decide to speed it up. If you don't, well, glad you're along for the ride. And that's our yak. Not quite what I was shooting for, but, it's not quite cubical, but it's a start. So, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and delete the things we don't need. We don't need that no more. We do not need the lines, but what we do for the lines is they're actually part of these shapes we've been drawing. Remember, we're not drawing pixels, we're drawing shapes. So I go to stroke and I say no paint. And now, lo and behold, I have some abstract sort of art. Now, my cubical yak isn't very cubical here. We've got this dent, which is a little bit hard to deal with. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to experiment with deleting that and changing the color of this bad boy. Like that. A little bit better. I mean, it's not cubical and you can kind of see that, but it's something. Another thing we can do here is we just adapt this a little bit. This is certainly evolved into a nose. Problem is it intersects with the hoof, kind of. But it's not so bad. Just throwing some darker colors there. And we've more or less got ourselves a yak. One last trick from this tutorial is we can duplicate the shapes, and what that does is it decreases the kind of that alpha that's used to smooth the borders, and it removes a lot of those white lines that we had there, and it makes it look pretty smooth. Even though if we zoom in, well, actually, yeah, if we zoom in, we can't even see the seams, which is awesome. So now we have got our SVG file. It started out as a yak. It sort of became a pug, and kind of, if this is the nose, eyes of, interesting. So what we're going to do is we're going to save this sucker. We're going to call this goods, and this was number 6. We're going to save it as an SVG file, so we've got the raw Inkscape file. And then I'm also going to go and export this image. I'm not going to worry too much about I'm going to actually, let's see. I'm going to size it based on the width, so set to 512. Just as a random piece of trivia, graphics cards being computerized and having lots to do with binary really like powers of 2, because that's what binary is. You've got 1, 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, 64, 128, etc., etc., etc. And so 512 being a power of 2 is something that graphics cards like. And in fact, they're, if you go low enough down, it's not going to accept something that's not in the power of 2. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to save this as and export this and this is going to be our final image, so I'm going to move it out of the raw folder, export it, and then I'm going to go and I'm going to switch over to Krita for the basic editing. And I'm going to go ahead and open the PNG file. Whoops, clicked a little bit too much, erase something. Cool. Alright, so this is the file that we have, and something's wrong in Denmark. It's not scrolling like it should be. There we go. Alright, so this is 100%. This is what it looks like. You can see it's got a nice transparent background. We're just going to tweak it a little bit and go to Image, Resize Canvas, and we're going to make this a 512 by 512 square. Squares are nice. They're easy to deal with. So I'm going to hit OK. Barely noticeable, but it means it won't get stretched later. I'm going to go ahead and save it, and bam, we've got our image. So that is how I am doing the trade goods, and the merchants are going to be similar. I'm going to have to work a little bit on the triangulation technique. You notice that the yak is not as cubical as I was hoping it would be, and you can see how the triangles didn't get rendered as I had originally predicted, but still kind of cool, you know, and it still looks respectable, you know. It's programmer art, but it's not that bad. Anyways, that's what I wanted to show you. That's what I'm going to be working on for the aesthetics, and until we come up with a catchphrase, I will see you next time.